On this episode, the Dunning-Kruger effect shows up because MKUltra really comes to light.
MKUltra was a CIA, but it was an operation where they utilized mind control experiments on people.
You're getting people like us internet sleuths, we are included in this.
We're never here trying to prove a conspiracy.
Some rumors get so outrageous that it clouds the real factor of what actually happened.
Raise your glass to mysteries, cocktails and conspiracies. Dive into these histories, cocktails and conspiracies. Raise your glass to mysteries, cocktails and conspiracies. Uncover those anomalies, cocktails and conspiracies.
Is your website still stuck in 2009 or worse, built by your cousin's friend who kind of knows WordPress?
No! God, please, no!
It's time for an upgrade. At sfx.com, we specialize in custom web design, SEO, and full-service IT solutions tailored for small businesses that are ready to scale. Whether you're just starting out or reinventing your brand, the team at sfx.com brings strategy, style, and serious tech skills to every project. Visit s-fx.com today, where small businesses get big solutions.
Visit s-fx.com today.
There's a strange paradox in the human mind. The less we know, the more certain we become. And the more we truly learn, the more we realize how little we understand. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, a psychological trick of perception where confidence rises as knowledge falls. And it's not just an odd quirk of human nature. It is a doorway into something far more unsettling. Think about it. Throughout history, fragments of truth have slipped into the public eye. A classified document half redacted, a blurred photograph of an unknown craft, a rumor whispered out of a government laboratory. And with just those fragments, ordinary people have filled in the blanks with absolute certainty. A crashed balloon becomes a starship, a radar experiment becomes teleportation, a mind control study becomes an army of psychic assassins. And here's the question we have to ask. Has this effect simply misled us, or has it been used against us? A tool to amplify confusion, to bury truth beneath a pile of coincidence, overconfidence, and error? Tonight, we explore the unsettling space where ignorance masquerades as expertise and where conspiracy thrives in the shadow. But what if the greatest weapon isn't secrecy at all? What if the greatest weapon is our own certainty? Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be, whether you are tuning in across the nation or around the world. My name is Shane Skwarek, here with the maestro of mischief himself, Mr. Philipps. We are your conspiracy realists, back for another episode of Cocktails and Conspiracies.
What's up,
Welcome
Chico?
back, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Phillips, I have to comment on this because I'm going to grab a coaster here because I don't want to destroy my desk. I had to make a comment on this. It's maybe more of an apology out there to some of our late night listeners. And I laughed at it the other day because I absolutely hit this listener with the old big Mr. Phillips. And the comment on YouTube gave me a little cackle because he said it woke them right up out of what they were trying to tone themselves down and get ready for a sleep as they listened to an episode of our Cocktails and Conspiracies. So fair warning, the intros, some days you're going to get a big one, some days you're not. It really depends on how I feel. But Mr. Phillips, tonight you get an average one.
You do sound very mellow and calm tonight. Is there any actual alcohol in that, or are you drinking like some kind of a tea? Some kind of like calming bedtime tea?
Not a calming bedtime tea, just an amalgamation of a lot of work. And maybe I'm just going for a new me. You know, this is the subject where perhaps we talk in a more sustained, soft voice,
In a
really try to rope
subdued
you in,
manner.
let you fall into the mystery a little bit here.
How
Um,
annoying would it
we're,
be if we did a whole episode where we just spoke like this?
I don't know. I think people would like that. It's a nice calming effect for a topic that I don't know, perhaps warrants that. This is cocktails and conspiracies. Sometimes conspiracies have a dark and ominous tone. Tonight's conspiracy, though, Mr. Phillips, isn't so much a conspiracy by itself. It is sort of an encompassment of a lot of conspiracies, a psychological dive, if you will. And it's one that has kind of lingered in the back of my mind for a little while here, as I've looked at my research in previous episodes. This phrase, Dunning-Kruger effect, has come up quite a bit. Um, I know you're familiar with it,
Yeah.
but I know you've also were saying to me before we kickstarted this that you really don't have the slightest indication where I'm going with this or why this ties into conspiracy.
So first and foremost, I am going to call this the Dunkirk episode because every time I think of Dunning-Kruger, I think of the movie Dunkirk, which is phenomenal. Christopher Nolan,
Fair
keep making
enough.
movies. Yeah, I mean, I am familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect, and upon doing some research on it, there are different ways that you could tie it into some conspiracies that are out there, and I'm sure we're gonna have a fun conversation about it. But yeah, I was a little bit like, oh, it's a little tough to get motivated here with this one. So I hope you got some good stuff for me.
So, a fair warning to everyone. I guess, you know what? Yeah, I'll start with my fair warning. A fair warning is that this isn't the episode where you're going to unlock some secret key to some hidden treasure, or we're going to find where the Ark of the Covenant lives, or uncover some ancient civilization. Really, what this is a way for each of you to perceive conspiracies. And some of them are going to be the ones that we talk about in the show already. Some will be the ones that we'll talk about in the near future. But the in the grand scheme of all of it, it's a theme that we talk about all the time, and that's what I hope you gather from this episode is a way to think and a way to dissect a lot of information. We're going to use specific examples tonight. I've got a laundry list of them, and we're going to maybe dive into or broach the subjects of a couple different ones too. But I want you all to really understand, I guess, the psychological aspect of where we're coming from here, which is, I guess, a pretty good segue into the definition and kind of setting the parameters of what we're discussing here. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a psychological phenomenon where people with very little knowledge or skill in a subject tend to overestimate their understanding or their expertise. At the same time, people who do have a deep expertise often underestimate themselves because they're more aware of what they don't know. So, to summarize that in short, the less you know, the more you think you know. And the more you actually know, the more you realize there's still a lot to learn. Sound good enough?
It's very valid. It would be as if, though, like you watched a YouTube video for 10 minutes and then said, I can rebuild an engine. Whereas a mechanic might go, hey, it's a little trickier than that. Not sure I could actually fix this engine for you.
Right.
Boom.
That is
The
that is
Dunkirk
perfect.
effect.
That is exactly what the Dunning-Kruger effect is. The Dunning-Kruger effect. I still need my SEO terms. So Dunning-Kruger, Dunning-Kruger, Dunning-Kruger. Index that in there. Conspiracy, conspiracy, conspiracy. Index that in there as well. Um, there's a lot of historical context here, and we're going to dump some examples in a second here. But throughout history, we've seen small groups latch on to a piece of information, sometimes a misunderstood document, a declassified file, a scientific concept. There's a lot of that going in the news right now. And they run with it as if it explains everything. Conspiracies, I think, often thrive on the gaps of knowledge. And that's what we've talked about a lot throughout all of our episodes here, Mr. Phillips, where the average person lacks full context. That's where speculation comes in. What is the biggest thing we always talk about when we come to these episodes about conspiracies?
We're not experts.
Well, beyond that, what's the biggest challenge that we find
That's
within
that's our
these
biggest
conspiracies?
disclaimer.
That's a good thing. That's a positive for us in the Dunning-Kruger
For
effect. But
sure.
what is that biggest challenge when you're looking into conspiracies and trying to convince other people that they're real?
I don't know. What do you think it is? I'm not really quite sure where you're going with that.
So where I'm going with that is oftentimes what we'll end up seeing is that people don't take the evidence on the surface for what it is. They often try to finish the story, right? A little Cody Rhodes shout out there. But they try to plug in those gaps. And what ends up happening there is that when somebody else comes along, they poke a little hole in the story because those gaps that were filled in aren't based off anything. It's all speculation. They made it up to answer their question, to get us from point A to point B. And as soon as you do that, as soon as you poke a hole in that, the whole conspiracy comes crumbling down. Whereas if you just stuck to the core conspiracy itself, to the core theory, I should say itself, it makes sense and there's something to build upon in that. And we've seen that a lot as we went through a lot of these other episodes. The World Trade Center is probably the biggest example of that. How many different theories there are out there, but then all of the other pieces, that the strings that people are trying to put in and tie in together, that's where it starts to get really disconnected and speculative. And oh well, if this happens, this had to have happened. And I think one of the reasons we even started this whole show is because you and I talked quite a bit about, we couldn't stand the fact that when you listened to some of these other shows, you had to, if you believed in this, you had to believe in all of this other stuff. You couldn't you couldn't separate those things. That to me is probably the greatest example of a challenge. I've got to mute this sports chat here because it's driving me crazy. That to me
Mm.
is probably the biggest challenge that we get in this conspiracy world, is that too many people want to be the person that cracks open the egg and exposes it, and they just make shit up. And they're so not convinced. They're
Convicted.
so convicted. Yeah, I guess that's the right
Yeah.
word, in their explanation or their theory of what it actually is, that they zone everything else out and they don't want to hear anything. The flight MH370,
I mean,
there's that guy
yep.
Ashton Forbes out there, right?
Hmm.
You try to question anything he says about MH370 and he loses his mind and goes on a rampage against you. And it's kind of evolved, that conspiracy, from a flight went missing, is there anything sneaky to it because it's really suspicious, to now it had to be these super secret governmental operations where they're using 0 point energy and they zapped this plane out and brought it to, like, you just, it's all speculative, right? And you took this from a viable theory that could have just been like something weird happened here, and you all of a sudden blew it up to this like supernatural, advanced technology thing, which maybe it is, maybe it could happen. Who knows? A lot of theories do, but it blew it up, and he's so laser focused that every time somebody questions it, he goes off on a rampage on them, right? That's the Dunning Kruger effect. I mean, as the greatest possible example. And that is simultaneously the problem that I see with a lot of the conspiracy theorists out there. Too hyper focused on the things that don't matter.
Valid.
How do you feel about that?
You're not wrong. I don't know. I struggle as to whether or not that's necessarily Dunning-Kruger or some. I mean, that specific scenario, we know that there is some monetary gain involved from that particular person that you just talked about. So I think that kind of comes into play a little bit as well. But you're not wrong. There's certainly elements of the Dunning-Kruger effect that come into play.
I think the monetization aspect comes later, right? Because you convince yourself so much that this is the way, that all of a sudden you think like, well, I'm the only person that knows about this and I need to get my voice out there. And now you start to see the money and you start to grow on it. You can grab any subject, right? And you can go find somebody that's laser focused on it, but then also go find an expert that knows way more about that subject, that is less likely to speak out against that. Again, Dunning-Kruger effect, or even imposter syndrome in some instances. Um, that's where, I think it is applicable, particularly in that particular example, but more broadly too. And we're going to dump into it. Um, the Dunning-Kruger effect doesn't just happen naturally. It does, but it doesn't just happen naturally. It can also be amplified or even weaponized, right? by governments, by institutions, or our great friends in the media to muddy the water a little bit and control narratives. So, a detailed breakdown. Let's start with one of our favorite topics here: MK Ultra, mind control. What is MK Ultra
Oh,
for the
MK
people?
Ultra. Sure, MK Ultra was a CIA. There was probably more than just the CIA, but it was certainly a CIA operation that was designed to essentially. I shouldn't say designed, but it was an operation where they utilized mind control experiments on people, some using hard drugs, many different elements. The idea essentially was to not only see if mind control was possible, but ultimately create like a Manchurian candidate, if you will,
Hmm.
in a
Hmm.
nutshell.
So, the Dunning-Kruger effect shows up because MK Ultra really comes to light. Ordinary citizens. I'm sorry. Let me backtrack a little bit. These documents are now open. They're FOIA. They're available. We know MK Ultra happened. That's indisputable. Ordinary citizens with very little understanding of psychology or pharmacology start to read fragments of these leaked documents and concluded that the CIA had perfected mind control through LSD. Some swearing that they know exactly how it's being done despite having absolutely no expertise because they're seeing these leaked documents, right? That's the beginning aspects of this Dunning-Kruger effect. Yes, it did happen. Yes, they released documents, and we've talked about this before. When the government releases documents, redacted documents, they're releasing just enough. They're releasing enough to kind of let you know it's there, but there's a bunch of other stuff that they haven't released, and there's generally a reason for that. Do you think that it's plausible that the reason that they leaked those particular documents tied to LSD is because it didn't work, or do you think that they were opening up the fact that it did?
I would be hard pressed to believe that the government would tell you that they were performing LSD mind control experiments if it did indeed work.
Right. So here's where we talk about the weaponization aspect of it, right? The CIA now encourages some of that confusion by keeping some of that information intentionally vague and other parts still classified. You're creating an environment where these conspiracy theories can kind of start to spread unchecked. So people are overestimating what they know while the real experts are staying cautious. All of a sudden, the amplification effect, it creates a smokescreen. And we see this a lot throughout all of these different conspiracies that are tied to government programs. I mean, they're openly admitted conspiracies. Some rumors get so outrageous that it clouds the real factor of what actually happened. When you talk to people about MK Ultra, especially when you start to go deeper down a rabbit hole, a lot of the foo-foo, the blah blah, the oh you guys are tinfoil hat people comes to psychic killers like what was that series of movies? I always say this. I always ask this damn thing. Um, you know
Series
what I'm
of
talking about?
movies.
Yes. Oh god, there's a series of movies of that one guy who's like a trained assassin, and he has no idea what his name
Oh,
is.
oh. Yes, I know what you're talking about. It's not the Jason Bourne movies.
It is
It's
Jason
another
Bourne.
one.
Yes, it's
It is
exactly
Jason
what it is.
Bourne?
That's
Okay, it's
exactly what I'm
Jason
saying.
Bourne.
Yeah.
There you go.
So it's like you're thinking like these Jason Bourne type characters. You're thinking robot assassins.
Yeah. Never
Psychic
seen that
killers.
movie, by the way.
Jason Bourne.
No.
Oh, there's a series of them. They're really good.
Dude, you know me. It's documentaries, sports,
That's true.
that's it.
Yeah, but
Done.
these are all you should have seen these before. But then that does is by clouding this, it starts to distract from the real ethical horrors of what actually happened in MK Ultra's experiments on unwitting subjects. They were actually experimenting on people by dousing them with drugs, by putting them in front of televisions that would channel secret messages over and over and over again. Whether or not it works kind of becomes irrelevant to the fact that the government was testing unethically on their own people. They were testing
Oh, it's
psychological experiments.
quite literally criminal.
It's criminal, right? But
Yeah.
it's but you get people that get so overhyped on the fact that it worked, right? And maybe it didn't. We've talked about this before, and we'll talk about it 100 times more. But they get so locked in on the idea that it works, it works, it works. They're doing it right now that you kind of dismiss that, and that aspect, the real aspect that we actually know that happened, becomes completely dismissed.
No, look, I think that's a really very valid point. And also, right, you said maybe it did work, maybe it didn't. if it did work, and I would propose that there are elements that not that you could necessarily prove it, but I feel like they got some results out of that.
You can
And
absolutely
if
prove it.
anybody that's listening to our show knows why I feel that way. Having said that, the government's not going to tell you, the CIA isn't going to tell you exactly how they did it in a
Hmm.
FOIA request. So
Right.
if you're utilizing the documents or the now declassified documents or things that were FOIA'd, you're not getting the whole story from that. So, I think anybody looking into any subject, whether it be MKUltra or 9/11, just to pull another one out of there,
Right.
you
Right.
really got to be cautious and you got to think outside the box. You need to think deeper and further about what it is that you are investigating, what it is that you are reading, and what those implications are.
And I do think that we can prove in several ways that it works. I mean, you see it in music, you see it in media, and you see it in social engineering, the way that works. You've seen it in advertising. I mean, we've had advertisements that were geared towards children and changing the behaviors of such. You see it with things like Coco Melon series right now, where it's like a series of flashing images, and it's almost like a drug for children. Whereas if you put on an old Sesame Street and you turn that off on a child, the likelihood of them freaking out is very small. You put on a Coco Melon, they freak out. It's because their oxytocin levels have skyrocketed, right? These are studies that are actually done. I think
So
that
glad my
the issue,
kids were too old for that.
right, like mine just
Oh,
barely
so
breached that one.
lucky.
Yeah, that we passed that a little bit. But the issue then becomes this where the Dunning-Kruger effect really plays a factor in here is, you start to think too much on the outrageous and only think that the outrageous is possible, right? When all these small aspects are in society. And so you're so hyper focused on the idea that they've got an army of clones that are going to march in and take everybody out as they want, that they dismiss the things that they're buying into right now. And that's where I
Yeah.
think it pays to be vigilant, it pays to be diligent, it pays to be conscious of the fact that not everything is a conspiracy, right? And not every conspiracy is that outlandish, right? Let's go into the next one, the big one that everyone's here for.
Hit me.
UFOs,
Oh, baby.
aliens, government secrecy around that. What is the single most famous UFO incident of all time?
I would say it has to be Roswell.
It's got to be Roswell, right? I mean, I'm sure
Has to be
some people in other
Roswell.
parts of the world might argue that. I know the UK's got Rendlesham Forest. They might
Hmm.
argue that, but I think Roswell is what puts
Virginia,
UFOs on the
Brazil.
map. Virginia. Yeah, that's a good one. We'll
Virginia,
talk about. We're going to
Brazil.
definitely talk about that one in another episode. I like that story a lot.
See, I wish I knew that you were going to bring up UFOs because I had, and I can't send it to you now, nor can I share it. I had
Uh huh.
something that would have been absolutely fucking perfect for what we're about to discuss. While you're talking, I'll see if I can pull it up. Go ahead.
Fair enough. You do that. Um, I don't. I think everybody knows the story of Roswell, so I'm not going to give you that. But Dunning-Kruger effect, where that shows up, locals see wreckage in 1947 and confidently concluded it was a crashed alien ship. No questions asked. The technical details of weather balloons, radar reflectors, or Project Mogul's classified experiments are completely beyond their grasp. These are your average, like, I don't want to say farm workers because you don't have that out there in Arizona in the middle of the desert, but you do have people that are more, they're going to be less technologically inclined and they're going to be more blue collar type workers. Not to say that they're dumb or anything, but they might not have knowledge of all these advanced systems that are actually happening. What ends up happening is after they confidently say they see this alien ship and they publish this in the newspaper, the military plays into it. Rather than clarifying the situation, they shift the narrative around. First, they call it a flying disc, then they retract that. Then they're intentionally ambiguous, and that starts to stroke conspiracy theorists' confidence. They start to say, oh, nope, it's just a weather balloon, and let's just dismiss it. And for decades thereafter, amateur ufologists are confidently explaining extraterrestrial propulsion and anatomy with no scientific background, while the government benefits from the distraction, shielding projects like Project Mogul and later stealth aircraft testing at Area 51, which we know came from there, right? We later come to find that out. I don't know this isn't a Roswell episode, but I don't know that I believe Roswell entirely. I think it's plausible, but I think it's just as plausible that Roswell was us testing something that probably crashed. The I guess the only thing that matters here is the fact that the government was able to create advanced weaponry in a time kind of falling right out of a world war where we just accumulated a bunch of German scientists. We're establishing ourselves as this superpower, and they don't want people to know. And so the best possible thing is we'll let them think it's aliens and then tell them no, and then just don't say anything else about it. Nodding your head, but you're not speaking. I don't like that.
I'm thinking. I'm thinking because I don't like it because I want aliens to be real. God damn it!
I do too. But we've talked about this a lot more offline because we really haven't delved too much into the UFO aspects on our podcast. There's plenty more out there, and we didn't want to just be locked into that. But we've talked about a lot of what Jeremy Corbell keeps blasting out, that we're going to be met with this big psyop that's saying that aliens are coming to Earth, right? And now you're seeing all these things that are coming from interstellar objects come in. We had that onomatopoeia, whatever the heck that one was, ahuma huma hapa duba duba, that fish from Forgetting Sarah Marshall. That was coming in a couple years ago. It took a weird turn. Now we've got more with Atlas that's entering the solar system, which is probably a topic for another episode as well. But you're getting this all start to kind of sift into pop culture. You've seen all of these in our where have all the whistleblowers gone episode. What we talked about largely is that all of a sudden all these people came up to the surface to talk about UFOs. They sat in there and they were talking about the skiffs, and they were in Congress, and they were being deposed. What's happened from that?
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Why? If we have all of this information, why isn't it out there? Why is it that we're leaking out videos, but we only leak out one or two and not dozens and dozens and dozens and more? One of which, by the way, is still, I will still attest to this day, is a smudge on a camera that we tried to say was a rotating, color changing, semi-transparent, and then opaque jellyfish. It wasn't. It was a smudge in a camera, and it was very obvious in that. But we release all of these videos, and then there's no context to them. There's no real explanation about it, except a couple people saying, like, yeah, that's true. But then nothing else. Nothing else beyond that.
What about the one that just came out? The one where they fired a missile at it and it bounced off, and then these three orbs, if you will, kind of projected out the back of it, and right? Like, to me, now granted, I know the discussion tonight is around how we think about conspiracies and secrets and things of that nature. If you take that for face value, right? That's a pretty astonishing video. I mean, when I first saw that, I was like, "This is cool as shit." Like, I think I sent it immediately. I'm like, "Was any like in our group?" And I'm like, "Has anybody seen this before? This is wild." But there's really been, and there have actually been some pretty good breakdowns of people kind of like us, if you will, or kind of I wouldn't even necessarily say like us, but internet sleuths that are a little bit more attuned to that specific space that did some pretty good in-depth breakdowns. But
what did you say though at the top of the episode?
I don't know. I said a lot of things. I say a lot
about
of things.
us. What are we?
We don't fucking know shit, bro. We're idiots.
Right. And so when you have all these other internet sleuths, all they are people like, and I'm not suggesting that you have to be well researched in something to have an opinion on it. That's certainly not the case, or we would not be here. But you have people like us that are making assumptions about things we don't know, and then they become convicted in those. Yeah. Dunning-Kruger effect. Continue your thought.
Very good point. Very good point. I forgot what I was going to say. What I was going to say was there's been, and granted that video, do we know the origins of that specific video?
I haven't even seen that video, to be perfectly honest with you. I've heard about it. I saw it on my feeds. I have not actually watched it. It's interesting.
But look, if nothing else, it raises an eyebrow, and it's certainly interesting. What I was going to say, though, there's no official, and there never is, right, any official word on any of these things, right? So, like, that video's out here. Where did it come from? How did we obtain the video? I want some kind of official information about the video. I want experts to take a look at the video and give me information on it. But to your point, Dunning-Kruger, right? Well, we're left with the internet sleuths. No offense to them. I'm sure there's some very intelligent people out there that do a lot of really, really good work.
Absolutely.
But I'm sure that there are also experts in the field that can give you more in-depth information on it. And we don't have that from them.
Lou Elizondo in one of those congressional hearings was sitting up there, and one of the things we had talked about coming out of that in one of our other episodes was what did he keep saying every time they asked him questions that he didn't want to answer? Do you remember?
Not off the top of my head. What did he say? Something it wasn't at liberty to speak about it.
You're right. He didn't have the permission to speak about
Didn't
it.
have the permission to speak about it, right?
Right, or whatever the actual terminology was. But he was basically saying that he wasn't told he was allowed to speak on it. And we heard that a couple times from a couple different people. If you're sitting in front of Congress testifying, but then you're saying that, oh, I don't have the clearance to say anything about that, to talk about that. Well, somebody told you then what you are allowed to talk about and what you are not allowed to talk about. And so apply that same logic to the videos that were getting leaked out. These videos are being intentionally leaked out for a reason. There's a reason that those are getting out and not other videos. And so again, likening back to the Dunning-Kruger effect is you're getting people like us internet sleuths, we are included in this, that latch on to these ideas, that blow them out of proportion because now we have the evidence, as we have it, right? We are so confident in it. But there's so much more that's behind the scenes. And when you have the whistleblowers that are tied to these evidence saying that, well, I can't talk about that part, I'm not allowed to talk about that part. Well, that to me, that is clearly telling us that that's a psyop. Like that is a psychological operation that is telling us that what you see is bullshit. It's absolutely meaningless. And there might be some truths sprinkled in there. That's how it works, right? But realistically, if we just took it at face value and stopped trying to fill in the blanks on what we think these things are flying out of the back of it, maybe it's just a film effect. I'll do the jellyfish video again because I know I saw that one. It's not a jellyfish morphing UFO the first time we're seeing this thing. I assure you that the government would have never let that video leak if that was the case. It's a smudge on the screen. It looks like bird shit. That's what it is. And if you just take it at face value for what it is, the problem is solved. But we don't do that, right? And that's, I think, part of what's happening. That's how you're weaponizing this tool, and you're getting people. Now, I don't know what they're distracting us from. I can't speak to that. I think you can, again, speculate and come up with any number of ideas, but for the most part, there's always something churning in the background. We see that all the time.
Look, I couldn't agree more, and I want to share something with you. I found it.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I think this goes perfectly with what we're talking about right now. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. And
wow,
what
this
I'm
is
gonna show
groundbreaking,
you,
folks. He is sharing the
groundbreaking.
screen. I don't know. I
I
don't
know.
even know what's happening right now.
I don't drive vehicles in
Computer-
PUBG, and I generally don't share my screen. But what I'm going to show you, right? In
There's
my
a reasonable
opinion,
chance he never gets the sharing to work, by the way. I just want to let
Very
everyone know
valid.
that's actually
Very
watching this on YouTube that liked and subscribed us already.
very valid. What I'm going to show you could be the precipice of a Dunning-Kruger effect, if you will,
Okay.
via the UFO world. All right, so let's take
Let's
a little
do it.
peeky poo here if I get this right.
Let's peeky poo.
All right, let me know when you see it.
All right. we're
So
up.
I have a
Okay.
photo up on my screen. You see that photo? Looks like a pretty normal photo. All right. Take
Okay.
a look up at the sky right here. You see this here?
Yep. Of course.
So this is a photo that I took, I don't know, maybe 2-3 nights ago. I'm going to zoom in. All right. You see these 1, 2, 3 in a triangle formation? Okay. Now I actually thought about sending this almost kind of like as an experiment, if you will, in our little group, and I just never got around. I was busy. I didn't do it. But if I were to snap that, or I did snap the photo, but if I were to share that photo with you and say, holy shit, dude, I just saw a triangular shaped UFO and I sent you that photo, what would be your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I know there's a hook here, so it's harder for me to dissect that
Right.
way. But
So
looking
let me
at it, I mean,
rephrase
there
that.
is different
Doesn't
color
it-
lights on there.
There is different color lights, which kind of does throw it off, right? But
Well, no, it would actually allude to the fact that those are, like all aircraft have different color lights, right? So it would actually lean into the fact that this is an aircraft that's just shaped in a triangle UFO for sure.
sure. Now, but let's take a look at the size and scale of it, right? So
Right.
if I'm going to zoom out, okay? If that was one singular aircraft, That's massive, dude. That is
Massive,
that
yeah.
is very, very big, right? But if I showed that to you and I said, "Hey, man, I'm pretty sure I saw a UFO," and we've all seen photos or videos of triangular-shaped UFOs, you'd go, "Wow, well, maybe you actually caught something there. Pretty interesting, right?" I know that I'm kind of walking you down that line, but you can see how somebody could look at this
I
photo and say,
100%. If
"Holy
you
shit,
post
that's
this
a
on the
UFO."
internet, you can get a UFO out of this. Yep, no questions asked.
100%, right? What it actually was three, I believe to be, because we live in New Jersey near many military bases, three military aircraft that were flying from my vision left to right in the sky and then banked and
Information.
went back left in formation. And I just thought they were really cool looking. I'm like, oh, it's kind of neat. So I snapped a picture of it. And by the time I snapped the picture, that's the formation they were in. So these are actually three separate. Again, I can't confirm they're military. I believe they were. You generally don't have
Presumably, yeah.
commercial or any kind of aircraft that are flying in formation like that. So these are certainly military aircraft. And like I said, when I snapped the picture, this just happened to be the formation that they were in, right? But
Hmm.
you could very
Hmm.
easily look at that and go, holy shit, that's a triangular shaped UFO, right? We've all seen those before. So, case in point, if I shared this, you're going to have internet sleuths out there. And let's say I was a dickhead and I tried to pass this off as an actual UFO. I'm sure I could convince a lot of people on the internet that I saw a UFO in New Jersey 2 nights ago.
Yeah. And that's unfortunately what does happen oftentimes. And not even just picking on internet sleuths. On the flip side of this too, is you'll often get people that, and we've spoken about this. You'll often get people that are so educated and such high prestige experts in their field that they will not deviate from what they know because it challenges the their entire careers. The best example of that is ancient archaeology, right? And we've had this discussion. That's what I was alluding to before in a lot of other episodes that we've talked about Göbekli Tepe or ancient Egypt or really any slew of those archaeological sites that you'll never get a mainstream archaeologist to ever admit to these ancient civilizations because that then means their entire career was bullshit. And it's a slap in the face. It's like a reality check, right? Like everything that I've worked for, my PhD in some cases that I've worked for, was built on a bed of lies. And I think we see that in science as well, not just archaeology and broader science, is people do not want to change what, again, not to cite anything specifically, but you could see it in the news all the time. Evidence comes out that such and such thing was wrong, and nobody wants to accept that because the answer is, well, I could never be duped. There's no way. I learned this in school or I read this and I put, not realizing that the entire basis for science and history is to be challenged. And so that's the flip side of that Dunning-Kruger is sometimes you think so much that what you're seeing and what you can very clearly understand is not what you learned, but you won't accept that. Like, no, I know a lot and I know enough to say that that's probably not true.
Dude, look, I mean, especially, I can't remember the guy's name. I was just trying to look it up real quick. But the scientist who initially, I believe he was a scientist, that initially, or I should say, discovered the fact that washing your hands prevented disease was laughed at and called a kook. Right?
Right.
He did a really there's at the time, and I'm gonna paraphrase the story very quickly, but at the time, childbirth was very dangerous for women, and many women were dying during childbirth, all around the world. And he kind of did this experiment where he had people that were delivering the babies, delivering the children, wash their hands, and those that did, he found that there was a much lower, uh, more I can't think of the word right now, cause of or cause
Right.
of death,
Likelihood.
likelihood of death, for the woman, right? And so this guy was laughed at, and I believe he actually was put into like a mental institution at one point. I'm not sure if I'm 100% accurate on that. I think he was from Hungary, but
Hmm.
to your point, that's a groundbreaking scientific discovery, and his
Hmm.
peers laughed at him so much so that he was eventually put into a mental institution, and this guy saved, I mean, at this point in time, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives with that
Easily millions.
discovery.
Yeah. No question.
So,
No question.
so to
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
point, Yeah, it's a shame that some of these people in science, and look, we could go on about the archaeology and history aspect of this for days and days, because I mean, my favorite subject is Egypt and ancient civilization. So, I mean, look at all the flack that Graham Hancock gets. I mean,
That's a great example of another guy too that
I
you
think
risk
Graham
your
is
career to
fantastic.
do that.
Yeah.
Richard Gage, as an architect, risked his career as a well-respected architect with decades of experience to say that the World Trade Center could not have collapsed the way it does. Right? He looked at it objectively and said, "This doesn't seem right. This is spitting in the face of everything I know," and completely shot down. Avi Loeb is probably one of the more modern, high profile examples of UFO researchers who I think he's an astrophysicist at Harvard or another Ivy League school. I'm pretty sure it's Harvard. Um, but he definitely did not believe in UFOs. He was interested in interstellar. I mean, he thought there could be life out there, but certainly not visiting here. But his work on again Oumuamua or whatever the heck that thing was called. He founded the Galileo Project. I mean, he has now become he's not a skeptic necessarily, but it is, I guess, kind of an open investigator. Jacques Vallée is the same way, computer scientist who's now one of the most careful researchers. Again, skeptical but curious. These types of people who, again, put their careers on the line for it. And even J. Allen Hynek, founds the Center for UFO Studies after being the debunker. That was his whole role for Project Blue Book, is to be the debunker. So there are people that break that mold and then get laughed at it because all of their peers struggle to accept it. And I think that is the point, right? That's why I thought this was an interesting concept to kind of bring into the realm of conspiracy theories. Is sometimes there's information that's fed out there where it's intentionally there to get the dumb people. We are included in that umbrella, by the way, me and Tim,
Oh,
for everyone
I
listening out there.
have no problem
Your
agreeing with that.
average Joe Schmoes that really don't know a lot, but like to speculate on it, get us to buy in and blow it up and exaggerate it. And again, go on social media right now, go on any conspiracy thing, and there's just floods of people talking about things. I don't want to mention the names because I think it's going to tie to words that'll get us limited again here, but floods of
Yeah.
it saying that like a person's shirt, like the line in the shirt of the microphone was a secret device, right? There's so many things people are just misinterpreting.
Had
That's an
so many
intentional
things.
confusion.
So
Right.
many
And
things that I
we're
wanted to
avoiding that.
talk
We're
about in
avoiding
that
that. Yeah.
regard, and it's killing me right now that I
We're
can't.
trying to grow,
But
folks. When
yeah.
you get us if all of you go out there and get 1,000 friends to like and follow our channels, then we can talk about this stuff more openly because then the viewer counts don't matter. But we're getting smashed by uh by the people at the top when we were
Every
talking about some
time
of
that
these
we
sensitive
want to talk
topics.
about something relevant in the news now that we're excited about, we just get
Yeah,
absolutely killed
we're
on
getting
it.
crushed, so we're avoiding those for the time being. But you guys get the idea. You know where we're going with this. But then you look at the opposite side of it too. Is like if you can get the dumb people to over exaggerate it, but then get the smart people, the educated people, the people that are disciplined in this to not want to talk about it because they're worried about the reputation, then the chaos and the crazy gets so overwhelming that it becomes a punchline. And we literally see that. I mean, if you look at Epstein, it's a punchline. Nobody cared about the list for years. It became a punchline because the dumb people made it big and the smart people just stayed away from it because they didn't want to get involved. Maybe they knew that something would happen to them too. That's what ends up happening. That's why I thought this was such an interesting topic, Mr. Phillips, because we see it, there's a little bit of it in everything we do. And as the conspiracy realists, it's kind of become unintentionally our forte is to identify where the crazy starts and where the intelligent conversation stops. And we try to bridge that gap.
No, I agree. And kind of going back to the topic that you were just talking about without talking about it specifically, just using that as an example. And I think everybody here knows what we're talking about. Um, I'm just using this as an example.
Yeah.
There's a
It
lot of
happened on September
dissent,
10th.
right? There's a lot of dissent between groups of people, right? Folks of
Mhm.
people that believe one thing and groups of people that believe another thing. And what does that do? That just creates chaos. Creates combativeness, arguments, and distractions, right? And we kind of talked about this offline a little bit. I don't think we've really reached much of that. as we're recording. But if you want to think about the Dunning-Kruger effect from a really ominous way, well, divide and conquer, right? So you can potentially, and I'm not saying that this is necessarily the case, many folks around the world can point to many different theories and things, or not even necessarily theories, but large world events, and say, hey, that's a distraction. So you could
Hmm.
even look at the quote unquote elites if you want to get into some real fun conspiracy stuff and say, hey, they're actually utilizing the Dunning-Kruger effect as dissent as a way to distract the population, to distract society, so that we can manipulate larger things over here. I'm going to dangle the carrot in front of your face while I fuck you over here.
And for those not watching on YouTube or watching on Spotify, you could watch on there as well. I'm smiling from ear to ear because that's where I wanted Mr. Phillips to land tonight. Is that it's impacted in everything we talk about. It's happening in everything. I mean, it's happening in the world today. You see it constantly, whether it's mind control like the MKUltra programs, or whether you call it the Dunning-Kruger effect, there is always some level of manipulation going on by everybody. I mean, we do it, right? Like when you get a salesperson that calls you up or knocks on your door, what are they trying to do too? Everybody's always trying to do it, right? I mean, you know this way better than me, Mr. Phillips, is one of the tactics in sales is to try to question somebody that might feel like they're a know-it-all and just give like an assumption that like, oh yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, oh yeah, you definitely, you don't want this like crappy one, like just to get that psychological bridge that like you show them two cars, and even though they could be the exact same car, they could be the Honda Accord, or they could be the Acura. What was it, like the CL or TL, which are the exact same car with a different badge on it. So no, you need to get the Acura. You don't want to. You don't get the Honda here. I know you're a guy that likes that kind of stuff, and you try to just like kind of bridge that gap, make them think a little bit differently because they don't know all the facts. They don't know the base models of it. It happens every day. It happens in everything we do. And if I can challenge everybody out there that is interested in conspiracy theories, whether you post about it, whether you just read it in your spare time, it would be to be mindful of the Dunning-Kruger effect, be mindful of the idea of manipulation, be it from media, be it from social engineering, or just your own biases towards the way you're reading something. Is read as much as you can, but go back to the simplest answer for it. Another phrase we use all the time, Occam's razor, and try to build an evaluation on that. I think that helps the broader scope of pushing a real narrative, because if you can just isolate down the core principles of that theory and prove that, then everything else can kind of fall into place. But once you have a basis, it's easy. When you start trying to pull all these other strings and weave them together, it just becomes an unstable mess, a web, or octopus, as the octopus murders once alluded to. A little throwback there for you.
Oh, that was such a good episode, or I should say series.
Series.
Oh, that was phenomenal. You know, and I would just say that whenever I look at something, whatever theory, call it theory X, I don't really ever try to prove it. I just ask the questions. Like I have
Bingo.
specific questions about something, and I just say, hey, does the answer to does answer A make sense with question A? Yes. Okay, well, let's dig into a little bit further. If the answer is no, well, then answer A is gone, and I'm moving on to answer B. So it's never necessarily that I'm trying to prove something. And granted, I mean, and you and I, we're never here trying to prove a conspiracy. But when there's something in my mind that I'm thinking about, I never try to prove it. I just question it, right? And when I find something that fits, obviously you need to utilize evidence for it. I'm not just coming up with random answers, but don't try to prove something. Try to question something. I feel like it's a much cleaner way to go about it, and I think that you go about it with much less bias, and bias is what ultimately kills you as it pertains to the Dunning-Kruger effect. As I like to affectionately call it, the Dunkirk effect.
Voltaire is famous for saying that judge a man by his questions rather than by his answers. You don't have to have all the answers. You just need to know how to ask the right questions. Well said, Mr. Phillips. That's what makes us the conspiracy realists. trying to walk that line in fun and fact, right? Do you feel a little better about the topic now that we've kind of had a little conversation about it? Or are you still like, yeah, what the hell did we just do the last 45 minutes for?
You know, it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
My G&T is almost gone.
Pardon the enthusiasm, everyone. Don't let him
No,
fool you.
if I could really go deep and really talk about some of
Yeah.
the things that I wanted to talk about right now, not even that I had planned, but things that came
Yeah.
into my mind as we were
Yes.
having this conversation. Oh man, one day, listen, 5 years from now, hopefully it doesn't take 5 years, but 5 years from now, when we've got hundreds of thousands, hopefully millions of followers, and we are not challenged by YouTube at every turn, we're gonna come back and have a really, really deep dive conversation about this.
And that also leans into why I wanted this topic right now, because of a lot of the things that are happening over the last year, 2 years, however many years. I think everyone that's listening here is wise enough to understand how this could be applicable to daily life. And it's something that we want you to take, not just in the ancient astronaut theory or ancient architecture or ancient civilizations, but in modern day society too. Understand how to apply this and how to look past it. Don't think everything's a conspiracy. We're not asking you to do that, but just understand what you're looking at and try to focus in on what's important. Would love to hear what each of you think. Leave us a comment down below. Like and subscribe first. That's super helpful to us. Follow us if you're on Spotify. Cocktails, Conspiracies, all one word, all together.com to check out where we are on every single social media platform. We do respond to your comments. So share a story, share an example yourself, or let us know if you think we're just out of our minds talking about this period. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, raise your glass to mystery. It's another episode of Cocktails and Conspiracies. So long, everybody. Tired of dragging around that clunky old grill to every tailgate or campsite? Hitchfire has your back. Literally. Their rugged hitch-mounted grills are built for adventure. Just swing it out, fire it up, and get cooking anywhere your vehicle takes you. And I've got a code to hook you up. Use SFXDOTCOM at checkout to save 10% off your entire order. Head to hitchfire.com and upgrade your outdoor game. Hitchfire, built to burn wherever you roam.